Part 1. The stars burned cold and quiet over the edge of known space. Out here, past the last human colony, past the reach of regular patrols, the universe felt empty. But on this night, something broke the silence. A faint signal, weak and broken, pulsed through the void. It was not human. It carried no code, no language, just a raw burst of distress, like a scream caught in static. The United Earth Defense Fleet picked it up on routine sweep. The source was a derelict ship drifting near the Orion Spur, far from any trade lane. It looked ancient, its hull scarred and blackened, half its engines torn away. No life signs registered, yet the signal kept repeating over and over like a ghost refusing to fade. Captain Daniel Cruz stood on the bridge of the UEV Liberty, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the main screen. He was a lean man in his late 40s with tired eyes and a voice that rarely rose above a calm murmur. He had seen war before. Not the big kind, but the messy, forgotten kind on colony borders. He knew when something felt wrong. "Scans show no power core activity," said Lieutenant Nora Bell from the sensor station. "But the distress beacon is still active. Manual override, maybe." "Any signs of recent combat?" Daniel asked. "Plenty," she replied. "Hull shows plasma scoring." "Not our tech. Not anything in the database," Daniel nodded. "Suit up. We're boarding." 20 minutes later, a boarding pod latched onto the alien vessel's airlock. Daniel led the team, Nora, Chief Engineer Rick Owens, and 2 security officers. Their boots clanged against the metal corridor as they moved inward, flashlights cutting through the dark. The air was stale, cold, and carried a faint metallic smell. They found the bridge first. The controls were melted, consoles shattered. And on the floor, slumped against a bulkhead, was a body, not human. Tall with 4 limbs and smooth gray skin, its eyes wide open, frozen in terror. Its chest had been torn open, not by shrapnel, but by something sharp and deliberate. "Cathar," Rick whispered, voice tight. Daniel frowned. "You recognize them?" "No. But I've seen intel briefings. Rumors. They're supposed to be brutal, expansionist. They don't take prisoners." Nora knelt beside the corpse, scanning it with a handheld device. This wasn't just an attack. It was a message. "Look at the wounds, clean cuts, ritualistic." As they moved deeper, they found more bodies. Dozens of them, all killed the same way. In the cargo hold, they discovered something worse. Data crystals still intact. Rick plugged one into a portable reader. Images flickered to life. Star maps, fleet movements, and then a symbol. A jagged spiral with 3 eyes. The Cathar insignia. Before they could copy the data, alarms blared in their helmets. "Captain," came the voice of Ensign Taylor from the Liberty. "Multiple contacts emerging from warp. Bearing 030 Mark 12. They're huge." Daniel's blood ran cold. "How many?" "At least 6 capital ships. Closing fast. Get us out of here now." But it was too late. The boarding team sprinted back to the pod as the alien ship shuddered under the force of tractor beams. Outside, 6 massive vessels loomed like mountains of black alloy, their hulls bristling with weapons. They moved with eerie silence, surrounding the Liberty like wolves circling prey. A voice crackled over all frequencies. Deep, guttural, translated by the ship's AI into rough English. "Primitive vessel. Power down your engines. Surrender your crew. You have trespassed in sovereign space." Daniel stood on his bridge again, heart pounding but face calm. "This is Captain Daniel Cruz of the United Earth vessel Liberty. We are on a rescue mission. We mean no harm." Laughter echoed through the comms, harsh, mocking. "Rescue? You crawl through the dark like scavengers. You are not warriors. You are insects. We're not looking for a fight," Daniel said. "Good," the voice replied. "Then die quietly." The first plasma bolt struck the Liberty's starboard shield. It held for 3 seconds. Then the second hit. The third tore through the hull like paper. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. Oxygen hissed into space. Daniel grabbed the comm. "All hands, abandon ship. Get to the escape pods." But he stayed. He knew the data they'd recovered was more important than his life. He uploaded everything to the emergency beacon, encrypted it with Earth Command's highest clearance, and triggered the final burst. "To whoever finds this," he said into the recorder, voice steady, "the Cathar are coming. They think we're weak. They don't know us. Tell Earth. Tell them to get ready." Outside, the Cathar flagship opened fire again. The Liberty broke apart in a silent explosion of metal and flame. The escape pods scattered like seeds in the wind. Only two made it clear before the Cathar swept them up with tractor beams. Scanning for survivors, they found none. On the Cathar command deck, High Commander Vorlak watched the debris field with mild amusement. "So this is humanity," he said, stroking the ridge of bone along his jaw. "They sent one small ship to investigate a ghost, and now it is gone." His second-in-command bowed slightly. "Shall we report back to the High Council?" Vorlak shook his head. "No, this is beneath them. One human world. Barely spacefaring. We will handle it ourselves. Send word to Fleet Sigma. Prepare one battle group. Enough to crush a nest of rats. One fleet, my lord?" "Yes, just one. They have no allies. No real weapons. They build toys, not warships. One fleet will be more than enough to burn their blue world clean." He turned away from the view screen, already forgetting the tiny ship that had dared to look into his empire's shadow. In his mind, humanity was already dead. Just another name to cross off the list of species too foolish to kneel. But light years away, near the third planet of a quiet yellow star, the emergency beacon reached its destination. Earth Command received the message. And in a dimly lit war room beneath the rocky hills of Montana, Admiral Lisa Garrett read Daniel's final words. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she stood, walked to the window and looked up at the sky. It was still night. The stars looked peaceful. She knew they wouldn't for long. The message from the UEV Liberty reached Earth Command in under 6 hours. It played once in the war room, then again in silence. Admiral Lisa Garrett stood with her hands behind her back, eyes locked on the screen showing Daniel Cruz's face. Calm, tired, certain. She knew him. Not well, but enough to trust his judgment. If he said the Cathar were coming, they were coming. Outside, the world kept turning. People walked to work. Children laughed in schoolyards, ships lifted off from spaceports with cargo and tourists. No one knew that a storm was gathering beyond the edge of the solar system. No one except the few hundred officers and analysts in the deep bunkers beneath the continent. Lisa called an emergency session of the United Earth Council. They met in a circular chamber lit by soft blue lights. Faces appeared on screens from every continent. Some were politicians. Some were scientists. All were scared. "The Cathar fleet is already moving," Lisa said, her voice low but clear. "And they think we're weak. They think one fleet can wipe us out. They don't know how we fight." "How do we fight?" asked a delegate from New Delhi. "We don't fight like them," she replied. "They rely on size, numbers, fear. We rely on speed, surprise, and every single person who calls Earth home." Not everyone agreed. Some wanted to negotiate. Others suggested evacuating the inner colonies. But Lisa had already made her decision. She activated Protocol Phoenix, a plan so old most thought it was just a myth. It wasn't about building more warships. It was about turning everything humanity had into a weapon. Meanwhile, across the system, quiet orders went out. Not over public channels, not even over military ones. These messages went through old freighter networks, through mining guild comms, through university research labs. They carried simple instructions: prepare, adapt, wait. In the shipyards of Ceres, engineer Jason Mullins wiped grease from his hands and stared at the message on his wrist pad. It was coded, but he understood it instantly. For years he'd been tinkering with old cargo haulers, fitting them with stealth plating and drone bays. His bosses called it a waste of time. Now it was exactly what Earth needed. He walked through the hangar past rows of silent freighters. Each one looked harmless, dented, slow, built for hauling ice or ore. But inside, hidden behind false panels, were weapon racks, sensor jammers, and launch tubes for micro-drones. Jason had designed them to look like junk. And in space, junk was invisible. On Mars, pilot Mia Rodriguez sat in a dusty bar near the edge of Valles Marineris. She hadn't flown in over a year. Not since she'd disobeyed orders during a border skirmish and gotten her squadron grounded. She was good, too good, some said. Reckless, others whispered. But Lisa remembered her, and the message that reached Mia's tablet had only 2 words: suit up. She didn't hesitate. She finished her drink, left cash on the table, and walked out into the red dust. By dawn, she was in a simulator, testing the controls of a new interceptor. Small, fast, built for hit-and-run strikes. It had no name yet, just a number. But Mia already called it WASP. Back on Earth, cities began to change in subtle ways. Power grids rerouted. Underground factories hummed to life. Schools ran drills not for fire or quake, but for signal blackouts and emergency broadcasts. No panic, no sirens. Just quiet readiness. The Cathar didn't notice any of it. Their scouts reported only what they expected to see. A few patrol ships near Jupiter, a small fleet near Mars, civilian traffic in the asteroid belt. Nothing threatening, nothing unusual. Their high command grew confident. They have no idea what is coming, Vorlak told his officers as their armada crossed into the outer Sol system. They still believe in peace. The Cathar fleet numbered over 200 ships, cruisers, destroyers, carriers, all bristling with plasma cannons and shield emitters. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of metal and fire. They expected to arrive at Earth, broadcast a final warning, and watch the humans surrender. Instead, they found silence. As they passed Saturn's rings, they detected the first human fleet, just 30 ships, old models, lightly armed. They formed a loose line near the asteroid belt, engines idling. No challenge, no aggression, just presence. Vorlak laughed. Is this all they have? One fleet? Pathetic. He ordered a broadcast on all frequencies. People of Earth, your time is over. Power down your weapons. Open your cities. If you obey, you will be spared as laborers. If you resist, your world will burn. The human fleet did not reply. Then, without warning, they turned and fled. The Cathar cheered. It was exactly what they expected. Cowardice. Vorlak gave the order to pursue. Let them run. We will catch them before they reach their moon. And then, we will show the galaxy what happens to those who defy the Cathar. The chase began. The human ships were slower, but they knew the system. They weaved through asteroid fields, used gravitational slingshots around Jupiter's moons, and vanished into sensor shadows. The Cathar followed, confident, arrogant, blind. What they didn't see were the thousands of objects drifting in the Kuiper Belt. Old satellites, mining drones, broken probes. To the Cathar, they were space junk. To Earth, they were eyes and teeth. In a hidden bunker beneath the Canadian shield, Lisa watched the Cathar fleet move deeper into the trap. Her fingers hovered over a single red button. Beside her, a young analyst named Carlos whispered, "They're past the outer marker." Lisa nodded. "Activate Phase 1. Far beyond Neptune, Jason Mullins powered up his freighter's hidden systems. Around him, dozens of other captains did the same. Their ships looked empty, but their holds were full of kinetic rods, dense metal spikes designed to punch through shields at near light speed. On Mars, Mia Rodriguez strapped into her interceptor. Her squadron, 12 pilots, all former outcasts or washouts, checked their weapons. No one spoke. They didn't need to. And near the asteroid belt, the last of the official human fleet slowed, turned, and faced the oncoming storm. Vorlak saw them stop. He smiled. They have chosen to die with honor. How noble. But as his ships closed in, something strange happened. The human fleet didn't fire, they just waited. Then, from the darkness behind the Cathar, lights began to blink on, hundreds of them. Then thousands. Not ships. Not weapons. Not at first, just dots in the void, and then they moved. The first thing the Cathar noticed was the silence. Their long-range sensors, built to track warships and plasma trails, suddenly flickered. Static filled their screens. Then from the blackness behind them, tiny lights blinked on. Hundreds, then thousands, scattered across the void like stars waking up. "What are those?" Vorlak demanded. "Debris," said his sensor officer. "Old satellites. Mining bots. Nothing armed." But even as he spoke, the nearest Cathar destroyer shuddered. A sharp crack echoed through its hull. Alarms blared. Electromagnetic pulse. Origin unknown. Before anyone could react, a swarm of micro-drones, no bigger than a human hand, slammed into the ship's shield emitters. They didn't explode. They clung. And then they fried the circuits with focused bursts of energy. The shields flickered and died. Another drone swarm hit the next ship, and the next. Within seconds, the rear of the Cathar formation was blind, unshielded, and confused. "Form defensive circle," Vorlak roared. "Destroy those pests." But the pests were everywhere. They came from dead comms relays, from abandoned fuel depots, from hollowed-out asteroids. They had been there for years, waiting, powered down, hidden, forgotten, until now. Meanwhile, near Neptune, Jason Mullins gave the order, "Launch rods." From the bellies of 20 retrofitted freighters, kinetic rods shot into space. No engines, no heat signature, just dense tungsten cylinders falling toward the Cathar fleet at orbital velocity. By the time the aliens saw them, it was too late. The first rod punched through the bridge of a Cathar cruiser like a bullet through glass. The second tore through an engine core. Explosions bloomed in silence. Bright, sudden, final. On the bridge of the Liberty's sister ship, the UEV Frontier, Admiral Lisa Garrett watched the chaos unfold. She didn't smile. She didn't cheer. She simply said, Phase 2. That was Mia Rodriguez's cue. Her squadron dropped out of the shadow of Uranus, engines cold until the last second. Their interceptors, nicknamed WASPs, were small, fast, and nearly invisible to standard scanners. They carried no heavy weapons, just precision railguns and smart missiles designed to hit one thing: shield generators. Maya targeted the flagship's port-side emitter. Fire! Her missile streaked across space, weaving through debris, and struck true. Sparks erupted along the Cathar hull. The massive ship listed slightly, its shields flickering on that side. "They're vulnerable," she shouted over the comms. "Hit them again!" All across the battlefield, human pilots struck with surgical precision, not at hulls, not at weapons, at weak points, at systems. The Cathar, used to head-on battles where bigger ships crushed smaller ones, had no answer for this. Their tactics were built on overwhelming force, not defense against 1,000 tiny cuts. Vorlak gripped the railing of his command deck, his face dark with rage. "Where are they coming from? How do they have so many ships?" "They don't, my lord," his second-in-command stammered. "Most of these signals, they're not ships. They're drones, automated, remote-controlled." "From where?" The officer checked the data. His voice dropped to a whisper. "From everywhere, Mars, Ceres, Titan, even Earth orbit." Vorlak stared at the view screen. The human fleet they'd been chasing, the 30 ships, was now circling back, not to fight but to guide. They were spotters. Bait. The real attack was coming from places the Cathar never thought to watch. Then came the worst news. "My lord, we've lost contact with Fleet Supply Group Delta. They were guarding our rear flank near the Kuiper Belt." "What happened?" "They vanished." No distress call. Just static. Vorlak finally understood. This wasn't just a battle. It was a trap wrapped in a lie. The humans hadn't hidden their strength. They had hidden its shape. They didn't need 100 warships. They turned their whole civilization into a weapon. On Earth, in the war room, Carlos pointed to a new alert. "Sir, the Cathar are trying to retreat." "They're breaking formation." Lisa nodded. "Good, now they're scared. That's when they make mistakes." She tapped her console. "Activate the belt." Deep in the asteroid field, dormant platforms hidden inside hollowed rocks powered on. These weren't drones. They were railgun emplacements built during the early colony wars and never decommissioned. They had waited decades for this moment. With a silent roar of magnetic coils, they fired. Not at the biggest ships. Not at the flagship. At the support vessels. The fuel tankers, the repair drones, the communication hubs. The backbone of any fleet. One by one, those ships exploded. The Cathar Armada, once a proud wall of steel, began to unravel. Ships collided, trying to escape. Others fired blindly into the dark, hitting friend and foe alike. Mia's voice crackled over the fleet channel. "They're breaking." Push them toward Jupiter's gravity well. The human fleet obeyed. They didn't chase. They herded. Like wolves guiding prey into a ravine. Vorlak watched his command fall apart. His pride turned to panic. "All ships, full retreat. Jump to warp." But warp drives needed stable power, and half his ships had lost their reactors to kinetic rods or drone strikes. Only a few managed to vanish in flashes of blue light. The rest were trapped. Then, from the direction of the sun, something new appeared. A line of platforms rising from behind Mercury's orbit. Old solar observatories retrofitted with long-range lasers. They fired not to destroy but to blind, to burn out sensors and targeting arrays. The Cathar flagship went dark. In that moment of blindness, Jason's freighters moved in. Not to attack. To broadcast. Every human ship, every drone, every platform sent the same message on every frequency the Cathar used. "You came for one fleet. You found a planet that fights with everything it has." Vorlak heard it in his own language, translated by his ship's dying AI. He slammed his fist into the console. "This is not war. This is sabotage. Trickery." But his officer said what they both knew. "No, my lord. This is strategy." And we walked right into it. As the battle raged around him, Vorlak made a choice. Not as a warrior, as a survivor. He ordered the last of his functional ships to gather around the flagship. They would make one final jump, even if it meant leaving half their fleet behind. But before they could charge their drives, a new signal appeared on their screens. It was a single ship, small, alone. Flying straight at them, it was the last escape pod from the UEV Liberty, Daniel Cruz's pod. It had been recovered, repaired, and now carried a final gift. A data core filled with everything Earth had learned about the Cathar in the last few hours. The pod broadcast one last message as it drifted toward the flagship. You asked if we only had one fleet. The answer is no. We have one world, and it is all we need. Then it detonated, not with a bomb, but with an infovirus. It flooded the Cathar network with corrupted code, scrambling their systems further. In the chaos, Mia's wasps struck the flagship's bridge, not to kill, to disable. The great ship went dark, and for the first time in centuries, the Cathar knew fear. The silence after the battle was heavier than the noise. Space, once filled with fire and fury, now held only drifting wreckage and the slow spin of dead ships. The Cathar armada, once proud, once certain of victory, was broken. Most of their vessels floated dark and empty. A few still pulsed with weak life signs, their crews trapped, confused, waiting for orders that would never come. On the bridge of the UEV frontier, Admiral Lisa Garrett watched the aftermath through the main viewport. Her face showed no triumph, only exhaustion. She had known this day might come. She had prepared for it, but seeing it made her feel not proud but sad. War was never clean, even when you won. Status report, she said quietly. Cathar flagship is disabled, replied Carlos from the comm station. Engines offline. Weapons cold, life support failing. They're sending a signal on open channel. Lisa nodded. Put it through. A voice came over the speakers, weak, strained, but unmistakably Cathar. It was Vorlak. This is High Commander Vorlak of the Cathar Sigma Fleet. We request terms. The words hung in the air. No one on the bridge moved. No one spoke. They had expected more threats. More boasts. Not this. Lisa took a breath. This is Admiral Lisa Garrett of United Earth. State your terms. There was a long pause. Then, we ask only for the lives of our crew. We will surrender our ships, our weapons, our data cores. Do with us what you will. But spare those who followed orders. Lisa looked at her officers. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted justice. But she remembered Daniel Cruz's last words. They don't know us. She would show them who humans really were. You will power down all systems, she said. Release your escape pods. We will recover your wounded. Your ships will be boarded and secured. Any act of aggression will be met with force. Do you understand? Yes, Vorlak said. Thank you. The surrender began slowly. Escape pods drifted from the crippled Cathar ships like seeds from a dying tree. Human rescue shuttles moved among them, careful, cautious. Medics waited in orbiting triage stations. No one fired a shot. On Mars, Mia Rodriguez landed her wasp for the first time in days. Her hands shook as she unstrapped, not from fear but from the sudden stop of adrenaline. She walked out into the red dust, helmet off, and just breathed. Around her, other pilots did the same. No cheers, no victory dances, just quiet relief. In the Ceres shipyards, Jason Mullins powered down his freighter. His crew was silent. They had done what no one thought possible, turned junk into a weapon. But now, looking at the wreckage on the news feeds, Jason felt no pride, only the weight of what they had done. Back on Earth, the United Earth Council met again. This time, the mood was different. The fear was gone. In its place was something new, respect, not just for their own people, but for what they had built together. The Cathar Empire spans 37 systems, said a delegate from Nairobi. If they learn we defeated one of their fleets with scrap and school teachers, what will they do? They'll be afraid, Lisa replied. And fear makes empires weak. But she knew the truth. The real victory wasn't in destroying ships. It was in showing the galaxy that humanity didn't need to conquer to be strong. They protected. They adapted. They used what they had, not what they wished for. Days passed. The Cathar prisoners were housed in secure but humane facilities on Titan. Their wounded were treated. Their dead were returned in sealed caskets with full honors. Vorlak himself was kept under light guard. He asked only one question when he met Lisa face to face through a transparent barrier. Why did you spare us? Because we're not you, she said. He didn't understand at first. But as he watched human medics tend to his people, As he saw engineers repair his ships not to use them, but to study them safely, he began to see humans didn't fight for glory. They fought to live. And they lived with honor. Meanwhile, news of the battle spread, faster than light, carried by traders, scouts, and rogue signals. Other species heard the story. How the Cathar sent one fleet to crush a young race and lost everything. How the humans used no superweapons, no alien tech, just clever minds and shared will. On a distant world near the Galactic Rim, a council of the Zenthar, a peaceful species long bullied by the Cathar, listened in awe. They did not hide, their elders said. They did not beg. They stood and turned their whole world into a shield. In another system, the Viral, a warrior race who valued strength above all, sent a message to Earth, not a threat. An invitation. We wish to learn your ways, it read. Even among the Cathar, cracks appeared. Word of the defeat reached their homeworld. Rebellions stirred in the outer colonies. Slaves whispered of hope. Generals argued in secret. The myth of Cathar invincibility was broken. On Earth, life returned to normal, but not quite. People walked taller. Children drew pictures of wasps and freighters in school. Old factories that had hummed with wartime production now made parts for peace. Solar arrays, water purifiers, medical drones. The same hands that built weapons now built futures. Lisa stood again on the hill in Montana looking up at the stars. Elena Cruz joined her holding her son's hand. They didn't speak for a long time. Daniel would be proud, Elena finally said. I hope so, Lisa replied. But this isn't over. The Cathar Council will respond. Others will test us. We showed them our strength. Now we have to show them our wisdom. Elena nodded. We're ready. And somewhere far beyond the edge of human space, a new signal blinked to life. Not a distress call. Not a threat. A question. It came from a ship with no markings, no known origin. It asked only one thing. Who are you? Earth Command received it. Lisa read it. And for the first time in weeks, she smiled. Because now, the galaxy knew. Humanity was not just another species to conquer. They were a force that could not be measured in fleets but in spirit. And that was something no empire could ever understand. Months passed. The stars still burned, but the sky felt different now. Not empty. Not quiet. Watched. The battle near the asteroid belt had become legend, not just among humans but across dozens of worlds. Traders carried the story in their cargo holds. Rebels whispered it in dark alleys. Scholars recorded it in data archives. They all called it the same thing. The day humanity showed its teeth. On Earth, cities rebuilt what little had been damaged by panic, not war. No bombs had fallen. No cities burned. The fight had happened far away in the cold dark, but its echo reached every home. People no longer looked up at the night sky with wonder alone. They looked with pride and caution, and a new kind of hope. Admiral Lisa Garrett still wore her uniform, but she spent less time in war rooms and more in meeting halls. Ambassadors from 6 species had arrived at the lunar station, asking not for weapons but for talks. The Zenthar wanted protection treaties. The Viral sent warriors to train, not to fight humans but to learn their tactics. Even a small delegation from a former Cathar slave world came, eyes wide with disbelief that such a gentle species could break an empire's arm. Lisa met them all. She spoke plainly. No threats. No grand promises. Just truth. We don't want your worlds, she told them. We don't want your resources. We only ask that you respect our right to exist. And if someone threatens you and you stand with us, we'll stand with you. It was a new kind of diplomacy, built not on fear but on trust. Meanwhile, Jason Mullen stood on the deck of a new ship, not a freighter but a hybrid. Part cargo hauler, part science vessel, part mobile workshop. It was called the Horizon. Funded by a coalition of colonies, universities, and private engineers, its mission was simple. Explore, assist, and connect. No weapons. Just tools, medicine, and open comms. He stood beside Mia Rodriguez, who had traded her Wasp for a co-pilot seat. She missed the speed, the rush, but not the fear. So we're just going out there? She asked, looking at the star map on the console. Yep, Jason said. No orders. No battles. Just see what's out there. Help who we can. Show them we're not all fighters. Some of us just fix things. Mia smiled. I can live with that. Their first stop was a Zenthar colony recovering from Cathar raids. They brought water purifiers, solar panels, and engineers who worked side by side with locals. No speeches, no flags, just hands working together. Back on Earth, Elena Cruz stood in a small schoolroom in Colorado. She wasn't a soldier or a pilot, but she had become something else, a teacher. She told children about Daniel, not as a hero, but as a man who chose to do what was right even when it was hard. The kids listened. They asked questions. They drew pictures of the Liberty, not burning but shining. In orbit, the old defense platforms were being repurposed. Some became research outposts. Others turned into relay stations for deep space communication. The railguns were deactivated, their barrels sealed. Not destroyed, just put to sleep. A reminder that strength could be quiet. But peace, Lisa knew, was never guaranteed. One evening, as she reviewed new sensor logs from the outer rim, Carlos entered her office with a tight expression. "We picked up something," he said. "A fleet, big, not Cathar. Unknown design. They're gathering near the Helios frontier." Lisa didn't flinch. "How many ships?" "Over 300. Maybe more. They're not broadcasting, not attacking, just waiting." "Any messages?" "None, but they've been watching our comms. Listening." Lisa leaned back. This was the moment she'd prepared for, not another war. A test. Someone wanted to see if humanity's victory was a fluke or a fact. She called a quiet meeting. No panic, no alerts. Just a few trusted officers and scientists. They agreed on one thing: they would not hide. They would not provoke, but they would not cower. A message was drafted. Simple, clear. Sent on all open channels in dozens of languages, including ones they barely understood. It said only, "We see you. We are not your enemy. If you wish to speak, we are listening." For 3 days there was silence. Then a reply came. Not in words, in action. One ship peeled off from the fleet. Small, unarmed. It flew alone toward the edge of human space. When it reached the agreed meeting point near Pluto, it powered down its engines and opened a channel. The voice that came through was calm, female, speaking broken English. "This is Envoy Kayla of the Thrin Collective. We come not to fight. We come to ask how," Lisa answered herself. "How did we beat the Cathar?" "Yes, we didn't beat them with ships," Lisa said. "We beat them with unity. Every person played a part. The farmer who grew food for engineers, the student who wrote code for drones, the pilot who flew one last mission. We are strong because we care for each other." There was a long pause. Then, "Your kind is rare." "Maybe," Lisa said. "Or maybe you just haven't looked hard enough." The Thrin envoy asked to visit Earth. "Not as a spy, as a guest." Lisa agreed. Weeks later, Kayla walked through a public park in Vancouver, barefoot on the grass watching children play. She turned to Lisa and said, "On my world, strength means control. Here it means care. I think we have much to learn." As the Thrin fleet turned and left human space, not in retreat but in respect, another signal arrived. This one from deep in uncharted territory. Faint, old, repeating a single phrase in a dead alien tongue. Now translated by human linguists, it said, "Beware the silence between stars." Lisa saved the message. She didn't panic. She filed it, studied it, shared it with allies, because humanity had learned something important. The universe was vast, full of dangers and wonders. But they were no longer alone, and they were no longer afraid. On the bridge of the horizon, Jason adjusted their course. "Where to next?" Mia asked. He pointed to a blank spot on the star map. "There, I'm past the nebula. No one's been there." "Might be nothing. Might be everything," Mia grinned. "Let's go find out." And so they flew, not as conquerors, not as soldiers, but as humans. Curious, kind, and ready for whatever came next. Because true power wasn't in how many fleets you had. It was in how you chose to use your one world.